He's none other than Mike Tirico, fresh from calling and hosting Game 7 last night. How are you, Mike?
Good morning, Rich. I just drove past University of Michigan baseball field here in Ann Arbor. You guys are going to Omaha.
That's right. So you're home. You're not in Boston now. Terrific. I'm glad you're back.
I not only did I get an early flight, but Doc Emmerich was about a row in front of me. He lives in Michigan, so Doc and I were able to share a good Delta flight on the way home. So fun run, fun night last night for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he is, Mike, I mean, I want to give you the floor on him just for a second. Obviously, I geek out on announcing for good reason, but I just his choice of words. It's like he's playing around with the English with a dictionary while he's got a microphone on.
He's terrific, and always had a high appreciation for Doc going back to when he was doing the Devils games. But being around him, that appreciation has grown even more. And doing 3 hockey games this year. Calling games. It's such a hard sport to cover, as you said, because of the speed, the pace of the game. You have no chance to look at a note or notes during the game, and it's just an appreciation for how well he does it and how long he's done it, and his passion and connection to the game is extraordinary. I think if it was a young broadcaster coming up, they wouldn't say, or people wouldn't say, hey, that's a good style to use because of the amount of verbiage compared to other TV broadcasters. It's all let the pictures tell the story. But Doc's command of the language and his use of unique verbs and adjectives to describe make it entertaining that you don't hear that complaint about it. He's a wonderful person and extremely talented, and it's been fun for me the last couple of years being at NBC and being around the finals a few times and other hockey events to be around him. He's a great man.
Yeah,
great man.
I bet. So what was it like in the building last night?
It was odd because Game 6 in St. Louis had that letdown atmosphere, and so did Game 7. The home team with 2 chances in a row to win does not. The road team won 5 of the 7 games in the series. I think that points to the style of play, that physical style of play from both teams, mixed in with talent, obviously, but physical nature. The thing I came away with from St. Louis, watching them as the playoffs went along and then in person during the series, so big and constantly physical. Every shift, somebody took a Bruin to the boards and erased a play. Patrick Sharp, who worked with us, who was on 3 Cup winners with Chicago, said it best to me during, I think it was Game 1. He said, it's 1-2 with the puck, and then you get hit. And that takes its toll, and I think it took its toll on Boston. Maybe the moment was too big at home for St. Louis in Game 6, guys who'd never been through it. But being on the road, feeling less pressure, they played their game. They got the breaks in the first period. Binnington stood on his head, hockey term, and they rode that formula all the way through. Good for them. Good for the sport too, Rich, because Vegas last year getting to the final, Washington winning, St. Louis. This builds 10, 15 years of fandom in those cities. And I was there in Washington, but now they believe. Vegas, it started from scratch. St. Louis, loyal, but the long wait. Now you've got other cities to go along with the ones that are passionate about, like a Boston or a Detroit. So I think good for the league overall as well.
Yeah, and then obviously tonight, where some long-suffering Leafs fans could celebrate potentially an NBA championship. I mean, every single time you mention about a long drought for hockey, you'll eventually hear about a Leafs fan that's saying, what about me?
Yeah.
And then there's Flyer fans that are raising their hands too. So,
well, when as I was driving and listening to the first segment of your show, when you talked about the poll question, I know the Knicks were there. I forget the other team, but the Detroit Lions and the Toronto Maple Leafs are the 2 teams that, given the longevity of the franchise, given the passion for the sport, and those are, Toronto's an original 16, Detroit Lions goes back to Portsmouth and the start of the NFL, given the length of the roots for both franchises and how long it has been, those fans, above all, that you mentioned are the 2 that are just desperate. Those would be the best parades you could possibly have. I tell people all the time, living here in Michigan, Detroit is known as hockey town with the Red Wings, Detroit basketball with the Pistons. Tigers had a couple of World Series runs. They had the '84 championship. Forget all that. If the Lions ever won the Super Bowl, That would be the parade that would end all parades. That would put it would be right up there with the Philadelphia parade for the Eagles. That would be the one that would be the topper of all championship parades.
No kidding. Because,
Yes.
I guess people don't think about it because they don't think it's at all possible to happen, Mike, with all due respect.
Well, that's it, Rich. I'll give you a quick story. Local sports radio, February, Mel Kiper, draft expert, mock draft comes out, or McShay, or I forget which one it was. And it's the first mock draft. The Lions might pick a tight end, which they ended up doing, the tight end Hawkinson from Iowa. Well, this is mid-February. It's a mock draft. People were beside themselves because they took Eric Ebron and he wasn't as good. I mean, it was 3 hours of sports talk calls. People are so desperate for, no, don't make the same mistake. We can't take it anymore. It is as real and as palpable as any sports drought anywhere in the country. So if that ever happened, Rich, it would be a cold day in February. Come to the parade. You'd enjoy it.
Mike Tirico here on the Rich Eisen Show. There's also nothing quite like the handshakes afterwards, right, Mike? I mean, certainly after a cup, too. I mean, there's nothing quite like it in sports.
There isn't. And I got to do, I was going to do the rest of the Pittsburgh Islanders series after the Masters. And it was one game because the Islanders swept Pittsburgh. And just to be on the air for the first time and watch the handshakes was really cool. But I wanted to see last night. So my responsibility is done as the game's over. So I was just a fan watching the end of the third period. And then I walked out after the Bruins went to their locker room. I watched the handshakes, watched the Bruins come past us. And then I walked out of our green room in the back to come watch the cup be skated by the Blues. I've always wanted to see that in person. And to just see it up close, it's such a childish thing in so many ways. I mean, you hear these guys, you think about in the NFL, we talk about your Super Bowl ring. Baseball, the trophy is, nobody cares about the MLB trophy, with all due respect. Here, it's all about the trophy and the fact that your name goes on it. When these guys get it, and they never touch it. I mean, they barely look at it if they haven't won it. But now they get to hold it for the first time and hold it up, and their name will be on it. Just to see the joy on their face when that comes after that emotion of the team that was that close in Boston not doing it, had to shake hands with those guys, watch them throw all their gear up in the air in their barn, another hockey term.
Yes.
And then watch those guys walk off the ice just completely crushed and empty. It's why all of us who love sports, because we get to see these unbelievable athletes put everything out there, and we are supremely and respectfully entertained by what they do. It's really it keeps us all fans in addition to doing this for a living.
Well, to bring Detroit sports, handshakes, and Mike Tirico here on the Rich Eisen Show, our shared experience of SportsCenter all in one. One of my favorite. I'll remember when I one of the first things I did on SportsCenter. I got on there February of '96, and then the Western Conference Finals of '96 was when Chris Draper had his jaw rearranged by Claude Lemieux.
Correct.
And then I think I did the late night SportsCenter. This is where things get a little hazy. But Cicerelli saying he couldn't believe he shook his friggin' hand, shook Claude Lemieux's friggin' hand.
Yes.
We got that soundbite on SportsCenter, and that was just, that's just the raw emotions. But he still shook his hand. He still shook his friggin' hand.
Hockey players are a different breed, and I've always been told and always experienced tangentially that they're a special group of individuals, and being around it a little more this year, that's in spades. Just the young woman who's fighting she's a young girl.
Yeah, Layla.
The immune disease, Layla Anderson, exactly. To see the Blues, not just the organization, invite her, get her out there, tickets in a suite, have her come down on the ice, and to see Colton Parenko on his knees helping her hold and kiss the Stanley Cup. I mean, that is so cool, and that's hockey, and that's what hockey guys are about. And that image is right up there with the images of the year in sports, no matter what happens the next 6 months. Just to see that, how people can reach out, and the Blues don't just put lip service to it. they delivered. I thought that was that was one that got me when I was watching it last night.
A couple more minutes left here with Mike Tirico, NBC Sports, here on the Rich Eisen Show. The U.S. Open, how do you see this playing out? Is there any shot at Koepka? Obviously, there's a shot. Been winning 3 straight in a row, but I mean, how possible do you think that really is here, Mike?
Yeah, I think it's really possible, Rich. He's wired in a unique way. He loves a challenge. He's not going to back down from the fact that he can become the first guy in over a century since Willie Anderson to win the Open 3 times in a row, to back up majors again while he's the current 2-time champ of 2 different majors. Nobody's ever been able to say that while holding the back-to-back trophies from 2 of the different majors. I was out there for Golf Channel Monday and Tuesday, and no, I know they've started already. Pebble is it's just so good for a U.S. Open. This time of year out there, the USGA has had its struggles the last 4 or 5 U.S. Opens, a combination of courses that were unfamiliar and a couple of hole locations in big spots on the weekend that were just poor decisions. This is a perfect place to get right. They can have a really good U.S. Open. And because it's Pebble in summer and the rough will be thick, I think it brings more people in play. I think a Jordan Spieth might have a good week this week. If you are in position and you don't have to hit driver to be in position, I think you have a chance this week. Now, the fascinating thing, Koepka, who hits it deep and if it is wayward, can get out with a wedge and putt crazy good. Can he do that with the rough around the U.S. Open? Short game's magnified. His is really good. How will he hold up if he's having a good ball striking week? I think those are the fascinating things. And because it's not a driver-dominant week, I think Tiger's right in the middle of the mix here. Look good, feels good. I think he's got a terrific chance as well.
Before I let you go, Mike, you and I have not spoken since the Kentucky Derby. And, I'm wondering what that was like for you, calling, the post-match replay process. I guess that's the only way to
yeah.
I mean, of all the things to host in your life on live TV, that's a curveball, Mike. Let's put it that way.
We weren't expecting that. I've spent probably, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 hours of my life at this point, cumulative time discussing people reviewing replays on TV with all the football you've done, but I didn't think it was ever going to be one straight 22-minute shot of it, especially in horse racing where, it's funny, Rich, we talk about replay in sports all the time. Replay's been in horse racing forever. I mean, going back to the 70s with inquiries and objections and stewards looking at video and all that stuff. So it's been a part of it for a long, long time. Just never to see it at the Kentucky Derby involving the horse that won. And we were about a minute and a half, 2 minutes into the process of talking about maximum security and the human connections that go with it. And our producer, Rob Hyland, gets in my ear and he said, "Hey, hang on a sec." And then you start looking around and then the dominoes began to fall. And 22 minutes later, we go to break and go, what just happened here? It was interesting. It opened some eyes. I think that people understand now the process that horse racing goes through. And it brought some people who had no idea that could be any sort of a foul in horse racing into understanding the sport a little bit differently. It set up a very unique rest of the season for the 3-year-olds, and I think going forward created a little bit more interest in the sport at a time when they've got their challenges with what's been going on at Santa Anita. But that was absolutely the most unforeseen plan at the end of a horse race that we ever thought we'd go through.
And I went on so long, I actually thought to myself, what if during the NFL replay process that we could interview the coaches and the players involved and ask them their thoughts, just like we were watching with the Kentucky Derby, going up to the jockey and the trainer and the owners. Could you imagine somebody goes up to Sean Payton? Sean, what are you thinking right now while we're reviewing this play? Could you imagine?
It would be on a 7-second delay.
Yeah. Bob Kraft, come over here. Let me ask you this question. But what do you think about the replay process that's undergoing right now that could make or break your entire championship? I mean, could you imagine?
That would be good TV. That's the one thing about the horse. It's funny. In the last 6 weeks, I've done the Triple Crown races, the Indy 500, the Cup final here, and a couple other things along the way. And just being a part of that stuff how accessible the athletes are in those sports that are not the NFL or the NBA. How all the owners and the trainers and the jockeys, they know that they get very little exposure relative to an NFL quarterback or an NFL head coach, and they're so good about sharing. And the access to them in that moment was unique and special. And credit to Lafitte Pincott III and Kenny Rice and Nick Luck and our racing group that they have relationships with them that they're really comfortable talking to these guys when the pressure's on. So it was something new, something different, but we can say that's happened to us before.
Well, you, sir, if anybody's deserved to get the time off for Father's Day, it is you. Happy Father's Day to you, Mike Tirico. We'll chat soon.
To you too, pal. To you too. I am headed to a golf course somewhere to figure out how bad I really am.
Hit him straight, nonetheless. Hit him straight, nonetheless.
I'll try.
Enjoyed.
Thanks, Rich.
You
too.
You bet.
You soon, buddy.
Okay, to you too, bud. That's Mike Tirico.
For more of The Rich Eisen Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV for free on BR Live or download the Rich Eisen Show app.